The rain fell like shattered glass against the restaurant's wide windows, and the city outside shimmered in silver and gray. Inside, under the soft amber lights, a man sat alone at a table for two. His watch was expensive, his suit immaculate, his expression unreadable. To everyone watching, he looked like a man who had everything: wealth, power, control. But his eyes told another story. Ethan Langford, the youngest CEO in Langford Industries history, had built an empire out of nothing but ruthless ambition. Tonight, though, wasn't about business. It was supposed to be a rare moment of vulnerability, a blind date his sister had arranged, insisting he needed something real in his life. Yet an hour had passed, and the seat across from him remained empty. He checked his watch again. 7:42 p.m. The woman wasn't coming. He exhaled sharply, signaling the waiter to clear the untouched wine. He should have known better. Love, emotions, they were luxuries he didn't have time for. He was preparing to leave when a girl suddenly stumbled in through the door, soaked to the bone, clutching her bag as if it held her last lifeline. Her hair clung to her face, her shoes squeaked on the marble floor, and her eyes darted nervously around the restaurant. The waiter frowned, ready to escort her out. She clearly didn't belong in a place like this, but before he could move, she walked straight to Ethan's table. "I'm so sorry I'm late," she gasped, pulling out the chair opposite him and sitting down before he could react. The rain, the bus, it was chaos. Ethan froze. "Excuse me," she blinked at him, wide-eyed. "You're Michael, right?" From the app, there was a pause, then something flickered in Ethan's usually stoic expression. Amusement, or maybe curiosity. "No," he said slowly, his voice deep and measured. "I'm not Michael." Her face turned crimson. "Oh my God, oh no, She scrambled to stand, but he raised a hand slightly. "Sit," he said simply. "You're already wet, you might as well stay until the rain stops." She hesitated, unsure if he was serious. But something in his tone, calm, commanding, yet not unkind, made her obey. She sat back down, cheeks flushed, hands twisting in her lap. "I'm so sorry," she murmured. "I must have mixed up the tables. I'm waiting for someone too, but, well, clearly this isn't it." Ethan studied her for a moment. Her clothes were plain, her hands roughened from work. She wasn't wearing makeup or jewelry. She looked like someone who had known struggle. And yet, there was something in her eyes, bright, alive, sincere, that caught him off guard. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lila," she said softly. "Lila Hayes." "Ethan," he replied. The rain grew heavier, and the waiter returned with a towel and a cautious look. Ethan nodded at him. "Bring her something warm to drink." Lila blinked. "Oh, you don't have to. I insist," he said. As the minutes passed, what began as an awkward mistake slowly turned into something else. They talked, first politely, then freely. She told him about her job at a flower shop, how she was saving to help her younger brother through college. She laughed about her clumsy mistake, and even he, the famously stoic CEO, found himself smiling. When the rain finally stopped, Lila stood up to leave. "Thank you for letting me sit," she said shyly. "You didn't have to be kind. Most people wouldn't have been." He looked at her for a long moment. "Maybe I needed the company." And just like that, she was gone, vanishing into the city lights like a brief, beautiful accident. But something about that night lingered in Ethan's mind. The next day, he found himself distracted during meetings, replaying her laughter, her unfiltered honesty. It felt foreign, how someone so ordinary had made him feel something so extraordinary. Days turned into weeks, and fate, or perhaps something more, decided that wasn't their last meeting. One afternoon, Ethan was inspecting a construction project for a new Langford building when he noticed a familiar figure selling flowers by the gate. "Lila," he said in surprise. She looked up, equally stunned. "Ethan, I didn't know you worked here." "I don't," he said, amused. "I own it." Her eyes widened. "You're the boss." He nodded slightly. Something like that. Embarrassment colored her cheeks, but Ethan only smiled faintly. "How much for the roses?" "They're not cheap," she teased, regaining her spirit. $2 each. He handed her $100 bill. "I'll take 50. Her jaw dropped. 50? What are you going to do with 50 roses? He shrugged. "Maybe I'll just buy your whole stand." That made her laugh, a sound that softened something inside him again. They talked for a while, about business, dreams, and the strange coincidences of life. Before leaving, Ethan said, "You should come by Langford headquarters sometime. I might have a position for you. She shook her head immediately. I can't, I wouldn't fit in there. But he looked at her with quiet conviction. You might be surprised. A month later, after much hesitation, Lila took him up on the offer. She joined the company as a receptionist, just a small role, nothing glamorous. Yet everyone soon noticed that Ethan, the cold CEO who rarely smiled, began visiting the lobby far more often. Rumors spread quickly. She must be special, his assistant whispered one day. He's never like this. But it wasn't romance at first, it was something deeper. Lila challenged Ethan in ways no one else dared. She spoke to him like a person, not a title. When he barked orders, she calmly pointed out when he was being unreasonable. When he seemed tired, she reminded him to breathe, to take a moment for himself. One day, after a particularly harsh board meeting, Ethan found himself sitting in his office in silence, the weight of the world pressing down. Then came a soft knock. Bad day, Lila asked, stepping in with 2 cups of coffee. He stared at her for a long time before finally admitting, I don't know how to stop. Even when I want to. She smiled gently. Maybe you don't have to stop. Maybe you just need to remember why you started. That night, something shifted. The walls around his heart began to crack. But happiness never comes without trials. When the board discovered his growing closeness with a low-level employee, whispers turned to judgment. Reporters caught wind of the story, painting Lila as a gold digger chasing the CEO's fortune. Lila, horrified by the attention, went to his office one evening. Ethan, I can't be the reason people question you. I should quit. He stood up immediately. No, you have a company to protect. And you have a heart I refuse to lose, he interrupted firmly. I built this empire to prove I could do it alone. But maybe alone isn't how I want to live anymore. Her eyes filled with tears, but he took her hand gently. Stay with me. Still, the pressure grew. Investors demanded explanations. Employees whispered. Lila's brother fell sick, forcing her to miss work for days. Ethan tried to help, offering to pay for the medical bills, but she refused. I don't want your pity, she said, voice breaking. I want to stand beside you, not behind you. Her pride hurt him, but he respected it. For the first time, Ethan understood what love really meant. It wasn't control or protection. It was partnership. So instead of helping her quietly, he created a new foundation, Langford Hope, a charity dedicated to supporting low-income families with medical needs. When reporters asked why, he simply said, because someone taught me what humanity looks like. Lila learned about it through the news. She cried, not from pity, but from pride. Months passed. Lila's brother recovered. The board stopped whispering when they saw how much stronger Ethan became with her by his side. The company flourished under his newfound compassion. And slowly, the cold CEO the world once feared became known as a man who led with both power and heart. One evening, Ethan returned to the same restaurant where they first met. He reserved the same table, the same seat by the window. When Lila arrived, confused, he smiled softly. Do you remember the night you sat here by mistake? She laughed. How could I forget? I almost ran away in shame. He reached across the table, taking her hand. That mistake changed my life. She looked at him, eyes shimmering. Mine too. Then he stood, walked around to her side, and knelt, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Lila Hayes, he said, voice thick with emotion, will you make sure my table is never empty again? Tears filled her eyes as she nodded. Yes, Ethan, always. The restaurant erupted in applause. The rain began to fall again outside, but this time it wasn't cold, it was soft, cleansing, alive. And as they held each other, both knew, sometimes, the greatest love stories don't start with perfect timing or flawless plans. They begin in the middle of chaos, with a mistake, a misunderstanding, and a heart brave enough to stay. Because love, at its truest, doesn't need wealth or status, it only needs 2 souls who see each other clearly, even in the rain. Message: sometimes, fate doesn't knock, it collides. What seems like an accident might be destiny in disguise. Love doesn't always arrive when we expect it, but when it does, it changes everything. Not by filling the emptiness in our lives, but by showing us that we were never truly empty at all.